Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, hi, welcome. My name is Kim and I am an author illustrator, and here on my channel I love to create cozy and intentional content about books and writing and just all around lifestyle. So we are in full swing into spring, friends. It's only been a few days. I mean, besides the fact that where I live we got a little bit of showers the last couple of days, outside of that it's just been beautiful. The sun has been bright, the trees are growing back all their leaves, the flowers are blooming, and it just feels so good. I want to spend every second outside. So I figured that I would do a video that is sort of like a things to do this spring season, sort of like a bucket list. I'm going to be mentioning activities, books that you can read, movies or shows that you can watch. I'm going to also mention some wellness things that I have been enjoying that I feel would be great to start the spring season. I thrive during the spring season, and it's not because I was born in the spring season, but I just genuinely love what the spring season brings and what it's all about. Spring is literally nature's new year, and as someone who loves to spend a lot of time in nature, I love to celebrate the welcoming back of flowers, of trees growing, of the animals waking up. Spring is the time of the year when we start sort of regaining our momentum after a long winter season of just being little hermits and being indoors. Spring feels just like a breath of fresh air, just rejuvenating everything around us. So I just find it vital. I find it vital to have some sort of list of things that we will like to do during this time of the year. I will be the first one to mention that the winter season kicked my butt. I wish I would have done some sort of list like this, some sort of curated list of things to do during the winter season, so I didn't get the winter blues as much as I did. But life got ahead of me and I just couldn't, I didn't make a list. So I did not want the same thing to happen for spring. So today I'm going to be sharing with you a whole bunch of things that you can do this spring season. With that being said, friends, grab yourself something to drink. I have water with me today. Grab some snacks, grab a cozy blanket, and let's chit chat about things that you can enjoy this spring season. By the way, I tried my best to make a list of sort of movies, books, and all of these things that are not really mentioned that much or that I haven't seen in previous videos from other creators. So that is why I'm gonna keep this list. I guess you would say I'm not gonna be mentioning things that one would already say, such as like Pride and Prejudice, Anne of Green Gables, stuff like that. I'm not gonna be mentioning those because those are a given. We all know that those are very spring-ish books and movies to watch or shows. So I'm just gonna keep it more to maybe things you might not have heard about. I don't know. So starting off first, we're going to start off with some movies and shows that sort of give spring vibes, or that I feel would be great shows to watch during this spring season. Starting off first, I want to recommend The Secret Life of Bees. I watched this movie a few years ago, and this movie is a handful of years older. I forgot when it first came out. This is a coming of age story. This follows our main protagonist, whose name is Lily Owens. And Lily, I believe, is a 14-year-old girl who is treated very badly by her father. Her mother died when she was a few years younger, and she sort of has memories of her having some sort of fault to do with her mother's death. Because she lives in a household with her father who is very cruel to her, she ends up running away. And she runs away to, I think this is taking place in the South, so she runs away, I think, to South Carolina. So she ends up running away to this place, and she comes across this woman, and this woman has two, I think it's a group of 4 sisters, and these 4 sisters have a bee farm. So they harvest honey, they take care of bees, they have a wonderful, beautiful farm. So you can already imagine all the wonderful images in this movie. So they decided to take in Lily and sort of show her the way of beekeeping. Lily ends up staying, and she ends up realizing that her mother's truth actually has something to do with this town, and actually even has something to do in particular maybe with these sisters whom she's staying with. It is a wonderful movie about loss and grief and honey and bees and farming and love, and it has some wonderful actors who play these roles, and I love this movie so much. The next movie that I want to recommend is 10 Things I Hate About You. This is more so a comedy romance movie. I think this came out like in the late 90s, and I have been obsessed with this movie ever since. It's one of my favorite, I would say, 90s comedy romance movies. This follows our main protagonist, whose name is Kat, and Kat has a younger sister named Bianca. So Kat and Bianca are being raised by their single father. I believe their mother passed away when they were young, and their father is quite strict. So the rules are that Bianca, the younger sister, cannot date until Kat starts dating. Kat is the older sister. So there's this boy at school who wants to date Bianca, but he knows that Bianca has a very strict father. So he ends up striking a deal with, I guess, the bad boy in the school, which is played by Heath Ledger, which I love. So the goal here is for Heath Ledger to swoo Kat into dating him, so then Bianca can be free to date whoever she wants. So of course this is all being planned out by the guy who has the hots for Bianca. So anyways, it's one of those movies where there's like a deal being made, and even though the bad boy doesn't really want to date this other girl who is more so the quiet and more reserved, very headstrong type of character, he has no intention of dating her, but because of the bet and there's money involved, he decides to, and it's sort of like enemies to lovers type of trope. It's quite funny. I found it hilarious. It is heartwarming. It's a beautiful exploration about sister relationships and just, you know, high school relationships in general. It is based during, I think, like early on, like I think it's like in the spring season before they go on summer break. So I just find that it would be like a cool movie to just watch during this time of the year, especially if you want something that's comedy romance. And I am a huge fan of 90s movies, especially 90s romance movies. I love it, and I love the fashion, the style, everything is just amazing. So those are the only two movies I want to recommend to you guys. Okay, so now moving on to documentaries. There is one documentary that I want to share with you guys. The documentary that I have been watching recently that I have been really enjoying and that I think would be great to watch for the spring season is Queens. I believe this is a documentary by National Geographic, and this is a movie about animals, but in particular it is following the female animals in each category of animals. I am someone who loves watching nature documentaries, just about anything, whether it has to do with like nature itself, the earth, our plants, our flowers, or insects, the animals that live on this earth. I literally love consuming anything that gives me information in a sort of movie format about our planet. I find that so fascinating, and I feel like during this spring season would be a great time to get into these as well. So Queens is narrated by Angela Bassett. I love Angela Bassett, and I have only watched the first 2 episodes. I think the first one had to do with the lionesses. Is that what you call them? Lionesses. The female versions of lions. And I think the second episode was a family of particular chimpanzees. I forgot the name of them, but it's within the group of chimpanzees or monkeys. I forgot what they are. But anyways, you're following the females of these sort of clans and what their journey is all about, what their role is as females, what they do to feed their young, what their life looks like as mothers, what they do to survive, what their role is in their families as female caregivers, nourishers. And you guys, I don't know why, but it's just so empowering and beautiful to learn about these female animals and their roles in their own clans and families, because even though we are human, they are animals, we still share that, you know, DNA of being females, and it's just so empowering to learn about. I've just been having a blast learning about female animals and their anatomy, their fierceness, their survival skills. It is just amazing. Like I mentioned, I've only watched the first 2 episodes, but I'm definitely gonna finish that this spring season because it is just amazing. Now for TV shows, I have been really loving watching series the last few years. I actually feel like I enjoy watching series more than I enjoy movies, maybe. I don't know why. I've really been enjoying TV shows in general. So I have 2 recommendations for you guys that I want to mention. Before I even mention them though, I do want to say that I have just come to the realization that I am a fan of period pieces. Okay, I love anything that has to do with period pieces, but in particular fantasy period pieces. Really just they're just so beautiful to look at. I love the fashion, I love the house decoration back in the day, in particular Victorian period pieces, by the way. Okay, Victorian period pieces literally are consuming my life right now. That's all I've been wanting to watch, and I came to this realization because I just recently watched The Artful Dodger. I believe this is being played on Hulu and on Disney Plus, and I just loved it. So I believe this is sort of like a Charles Dickens retelling. It does have to do with Oliver Twist, which is a character from Charles Dickens, but in particular we are following Jack Dawkins, and Jack Dawkins is a young and witty surgeon. He is also a pickpocketer, and he has a history of crime, but in this series he is a more established surgeon now. He has left his past of being a pickpocketer and a criminal behind. He's trying to pursue his life as just being a well-known surgeon, but of course his past comes to haunt him when I think his uncle comes looking for him to try and get him to do one last and final heist. But of course Jack does not want to do that. He wants to continue pursuing his surgeon career, and it doesn't help that this very also witty young woman, who is also the daughter of the governor, wants to also pursue surgery. So she ends up striking a deal with Jack because she caught him in the middle of doing something bad and told him, hey, I will not telling you about what I found out about you, only if you take me under your wing and you make me the first woman surgeon. So of course Jack takes up the deal and he has to teach her the ropes, and of course there is a little love romance going on there. I will say that this series is a bit gruesome. You have to have a strong stomach in some cases because it does show some of the surgery parts. There is blood, lots of surgeries, but I just found that the whole storyline was just funny and witty, and maybe it's because it's set in the sort of Victorian era, and I just love the costumes, the fashion, the house decor. I just loved it. Was just such a visually appealing show to watch and see, and I immediately just fell in love, and I actually really enjoyed the entire story of Jack Dawkins being a surgeon, a pickpocketer, and I just found it fascinating how surgeries were being done back in the day. How there wasn't that much discovery or science, I guess, or medical discoveries with doing surgeries, and how surgeries were just done in general. It was just fascinating to sort of learn about in this TV show. It was just fun. If you love period pieces, if you love Victorian period pieces, this didn't have any fantasy elements to it, but it was just funny. I was literally laughing out loud, and the love story was cute, and the backstory about being a surgeon and what surgery was like in the 1800s was just fascinating to me. Now, the last show I want to recommend is called The Lost Flowers of Alice Hart. This is a drama TV show that I watched, I think, the end of last year. I believe this is being played on Amazon Prime, I think. But this follows our main protagonist, whose name is Alice Hart. And when Alice was a young girl, her parents died in a very mysterious fire. She survived. So Alice got sent off to go live with her estranged grandmother. Her grandmother from her father's side, I believe. And her grandmother owns a flower farm. So Alice grew up not knowing about her grandmother, right? And when she goes to live with her, she's sort of trying to get to know her. She's a little bit confused because there are multitude of strangers who live in this flower farm, and Alice doesn't understand who they are. They're not related to her grandmother. Why are they staying here? And they sort of work in the flower farm, but there's something more to it. Her grandmother treats them like family, and she doesn't understand why. And these are all women. There are no men here. They're just all women. And her grandmother practices a very unique way of flower arranging. So for her grandmother, flowers, each individual flower tell a story, and when you arrange them in a bouquet, they sort of tell a whole story. So when you give someone an arranged bouquet, you're sort of telling them something by the arrangement of flowers that you chose. So Alice learns about this practice, and she ends up learning as to why her grandmother houses all these women who have sort of taken refuge at her farm. But her grandmother is sort of very controlling, and she does something very unforgiving to Alice, which causes Alice to run away and sort of find herself. And she is still dealing with the dread of her parents' death, dying in this very mysterious fire. It is a very, in some cases, hard show to watch because it does have some very triggering moments. It does explore themes such as finding yourself, finding your voice, healing, and I found it very interesting to watch. I love the visual aspect of it, and I really enjoyed this series. All right, friends, so now moving on to books. The books I have decided to sort of categorize. So I have new releases, I have Regency England, then I have cozy fantasy, a little bit of magical realism, and then some retellings that I want to tell you guys about that would sound great for this spring season. I'm going to try and go as fast as possible with these just for the sake of not making this video way too long. So the first one that I want to mention is The Honey Witch. The Honey Witch by Sydney J. Shields. I have mentioned this book before, I think in my 2024 anticipated releases. So this book is officially out, and it just sounds so good, you guys. This is a sapphic fantasy romance novel, and it says here, 21-year-old Marigold Claude has always preferred the company of the spirits of the meadow to any of the suitors who've tried to woo her. So when her grandmother whisks her away to the family cottage on the tiny isle of Innisfree with an offer to train her as the next honey witch, she accepts immediately. But her newfound magic and independence come with a no one can fall in love with the honey witch. When Lottie Burke, a notoriously grumpy skeptic who doesn't believe in magic, shows up at her doorstep, Marigold can't resist the challenge to prove to her that magic is real. But soon Marigold begins to care for Lottie in ways she never expected. And when the darker magic awakens and threatens to destroy her home, she must fight for much more than her new home, at the risk of losing her magic and her heart. That is the only one new release that I want to mention because that just sounds so up my alley, and maybe you guys will also want to pick that up. So moving on to Regency fairy tales that I want to mention that I feel would be great to read this spring season. Starting off with a book that I recently finished, and that is Half a Soul. I mentioned this book in one of my previous videos. This is by Olivia Atwater, and this is following our main protagonist, whose name is Dora. And Dora, when she was younger, an evil fairy lord came to try and lure her away, and her cousin saved her by stabbing the fairy in the leg. But he was able to take half of Dora's soul. So now Dora is only living with half a soul in her now home. So that means that Dora doesn't really have, she's not really emotionally there. She doesn't really feel that many emotions. She doesn't know when something's funny. She doesn't know if something has made her angry. She's very neutral because she is missing half her soul. She's missing that part of her that connects to her emotions in general. So because of this, Dora feels like she's never gonna fall in love because she's missing that part of her that really connects to any sort of emotion. Dora has a beautiful relationship with her cousin. She's very close to her, and her cousin is seeking a husband, and she whisks Dora away with her to go and try and look for a husband. I think in London somewhere. They go to balls and they go to all these parties. So in this venture of her cousin trying to find a husband, Dora ends up meeting this famous magician. He is grumpy, he is mean, but Dora seems to get his attention in some way, and he just seems to be around all these balls that Dora and her cousin are going to. And it seems like this magician is the only one that might be able to help her with this half a soul problem that she has. He might be able to retrieve her other part of her soul. And through all of these scenarios, they sort of end up falling for each other, even though Dora thought that she could never love. This book was so quirky, it was funny. This book made me want to put on a gown and go prance around in a valley of flowers. It was just funny. It was funny, it was quirky. I absolutely loved it. I didn't think I would love this book as much as I did. I thought it was going to be another fantasy romance novel that I was just gonna check off my list, but this actually ended up being really good. So if you like Half a Soul or you've read Half a Soul and you want something else like this, there's another book that this author has written, and that is called 10,000 Stitches. I have not read this book, but the synopsis says, Effie has most inconveniently fallen in love with the dashing Mr. Benedict Ashbrook. There's only one problem. Effie is a housemaid, and a housemaid cannot marry a gentleman. It seems that Effie is out of luck until she stumbles into fairy realm of Lord Blackthorn, who is only too eager to help Effie win Mr. Ashbrook's heart. All he asks in return is that Effie sew 10,000 stitches onto his favorite jacket. Effie has heard rumors about what happens to those who accept help from fairies, but life as a maid at Hartfield is so awful that she is willing to risk even her immortal soul for a chance at something better. Now she has 100 days and 10,000 stitches to make Mr. Ashbrook's fall in love and propose. If Lord Blackthorn doesn't wreck things by accident, that is. For Effie's greatest obstacle might prove to be Lord Blackthorn's overwhelmingly good intentions. I loved Half a Soul, so I am for sure going to be reading 10,000 Stitches by Olivia Atwater as well. And the last book that I have for you guys that has to do with Regency era is titled The Benevolent Society of Ill-Mannered Ladies by Alison Goodman. I have been seeing this book around for quite some time now, and I always pick it up when I go to the bookstore and then I put it back down. I don't know why, but it just sounds so good, you guys. Let me read to you the synopsis. Lady Augusta Colebrook, Gus, is determinedly unmarried, bored by society life, and tired of being dismissed at the age of 42. She and her twin sister Julia, who is grieving her dead betrothed, need a distraction. One soon presents to rescue her friend's goddaughter Caroline from her violent husband. The sisters set out to Caroline's country estate with a plan, but their carriage is accosted by a highwayman. In the scuffle, Gus accidentally shots and injures the ruffian, only to discover he is Lord Evan Beltrode, an acquaintance from their past who was charged with murder and exiled to Australia 20 years ago. What follows is a high adventure full of danger, clever improvisation, heart-racing near misses, and a little help from a revived and rather charming Lord Evan. Back in London, Gus can't stop thinking about her unlikely, not to mention handsome, comrade in arms. She is convinced Lord Evan was falsely accused of murder, and she is going to prove it. She persuades Julia to join her in a quest to help Lord Evan and others in need. Society be damned, and so begins the begilding secret life and adventure of the Colebrook twins. Okay, two things that I'm already loving about this book, even though I've never read it, is that it is giving me Elona Holmes. If you watched the series, you know, because, you know, Elona Holmes, Sherlock Holmes's little sister who is also a detective. This is what the vibes that this is giving me. And also I love that the main protagonist is in her 40s. I want to read more main characters who are on their 30s or 40s, 50s, older. I've read a handful of books whose main protagonist is in their 20s and I love it, but I am also wanting to read more 30s and 40s, and I feel like that sometimes lacks. The representation lacks in books. So I'm excited that this has main protagonists who are on their 40s. That is amazing. All right, friends, so now moving on to cozy fantasy or just fantasy books. I have quite the list here. The first one is called Baker's Magic by J. Penner. I read this book, I think the beginning, was it this year? It was the beginning of this year. I read it on my Kindle. I had such a good time. If you love legends and lattes, Baker's Magic is for you. We are following our main character whose name is Arletta, and Arletta lives in this town that is called Adenshire. In this town, you know, you have orcs, you have elves, you have fairies, you have humans. They all live in union here, okay? But Arletta is a very normal human. She loves to bake, but she holds no magic whatsoever, and her dream would be to open up a bakery one day, but she does not have any money. So her two best friends, who are orcs, which is so cute, they end up enrolling her in a baking competition. And at first she's against it, but then she decides to just do it because the reward would be money, and with that money she could start her baking business that she's always wanted. So Arletta ends up going to the baking competition, and she's a little self-conscious because everyone seems to have magic and she has no magic whatsoever. before, so she can only rely on her very good baking skills to be able to hopefully win this competition. Of course, she is met with a lot of troubles at this bake-off that she sort of ends up questioning her baking skills and whether she can do it. She meets a cute guy at this baking competition. She makes some very witty and beautiful friendships, and it is just so funny. It is quirky, it is cozy, it has amazing food descriptions. I had a really good time with this book. Now this next one I actually had borrowed on my Kindle to read, and then I completely forgot about it, and then it got returned. That sucks, but I do really want to read this book, and that is Last Sunrise in Eterna by Amparo Ortiz. Let me just say this about this book, okay? This is gonna encapsulate what this book sort of gives off. Goth fairies. Let that sit for a while. Goth fairies. That's what this is about. It says here, 3 teenagers are invited to spend 7 days on the secluded island floating off the coast of Puerto Rico to learn the magic of the elves. All they have to do is give up their dreams. 17-year-old goth Seven Burgos hates elves. Everyone else on Earth loves the elves, especially their handsome princess, and would give anything to participate in Eterna's annual exchange, where 3 teens can trade their dreams for a week of elven magic. But Seven knows things most people don't. She can see through the illusions the elves use to conceal their crimes. Ever since elves killed her father, Seven has longed for revenge. So to help support her single mother, she has been selling abandoned elf corpses on the black market. But it turns out that the elf prince, Aro, has noticed Seven body snatching, so he kidnaps her mother in retaliation. To get her mother back, Seven must participate in the exchange. In the home of the elves, Seven will have to surrender her dreams and put her trust in the charming prince who took the last family member she has in order to master the art of elf magic. And in working with him, she will discover how the royal elves might be more tied to her own history than she ever suspected. Now, my last recommendation in the cozy fantasy category, I do have, but I have not read this book. I own it, but I have not read it, okay? And that is The Fae's Bride by R.L. Medina. I actually bought this on my Kindle, and it was only like $2, you guys, and it just sounds so good. The synopsis: Alessia has more to worry about than the handsome new count everyone is fawning over. Mama's health is declining, the villa needs repairs, and then there are the 4 sisters who always seem to be either in trouble or causing it. With his Fae blood, Massimo never expected to inherit the life of Count, nor the lands that accompanied it. And he certainly never expected to fall for the town's quirky witch, especially when she clearly wants nothing to do with him. It will take more than magic to bring them together. Welcome to Samera, where cozy fantasy intertwines with Italian cottagecore and fairycore vibes. I think this is a whole series, you guys. I think there's another one that I think is more like giving off autumn vibes, and I think that one's called The Goblin's Bride or something like that. So there's a whole series on these, and I am just so excited to get into these. Alright friends, so now moving on to this small category I have of magical realism, or around those sort of themes, I suppose. The first one that I have on here that I have not read but I really want to read is called A Highlander for Hannah by Mary Warren. Okay, fact about me, I am obsessed with Outlander. You know how I said that I love period pieces? Okay, well, one of my obsessions is also Outlander. I love that freaking show so much. And this, I read that was giving off Outlander vibes. As soon as I found that out, I was like, yeah, sign me up. I need to read that book. Synopsis says, Hannah Glenn is ready for a change. After quitting her job and breaking up with her slacker boyfriend, she moves to her family's farm. In her search for clarity, she let her best friend talk to her into buying a love spell. Hannah doesn't believe in magic, but decides to perform the spell anyway. What harm could it do? The ancient, brutish, but also undeniably handsome Scotman she finds in her barn the next morning might be the answer to the question. Graham McNeil fell asleep in his uncle's stable in 1745. He awoke over 200 years into the future across the Atlantic. He is in a world he knows nothing about, with a woman who drives him mad. Mad with lust and just plain mad. The spell can only be reversed under the moon of the spring equinox. They are going to have to find a way to survive each other until then. It's only a matter of months. I mean, what can happen in that time? This sounds so quirky and funny. You guys, I think this is going to be actually the first book, the official first book that I read in honor of spring. This is going to be that one. My camera died, friends, so if you see that this looks a little different, I am sorry. but my camera battery died and the other one I had charging wasn't charging. So here we are filming with my phone. Anyways, moving on. That was it for, I guess, the magical realism book recommendations that I had on here. Moving on to retellings. That is my last category, and I'm going to be sharing some retelling books that just sound amazing. Retellings are books that are retellings of like your classic books. Now, if you know me, if you've been here on my channel before, you know that I'm a huge fan of Anne of Green Gables. I love Anne of Green Gables, and Anne of Green Gables screams spring to me. I love who Anne is. We are kindred spirits. She is me, I am her, we are one. So of course I have been on the hunt for some good Anne of Green Gables retellings, and I found two, and both of these I believe are graphic novels that I am just so excited to pick up and read for this spring season. The first one I want to share with you is called Anne of West Philly by Ivy Noel Ware and Maisha Haynes. And the synopsis here says, when Marilla and Matthew Cuthbert decide to foster a teenage girl for the first time, their lives are changed forever. Their red-headed foster daughter, Anne Shirley, is in search of an exciting life and has decided that West Philly is where she's going to find it. Armed with a big personality and unstoppable creativity, Anne takes her new home by storm. As she joins the robotics club, makes new friends in Diana and Gilbert, experiences first love, and turns the ordinary into extraordinary. But as Anne starts to get comfortable, she discovers one thing she wasn't looking for: a family. Now, this next one is also an Anne of Green Gables retelling, and this one's called Anne, an adaptation of Anne of Green Gables, sort of, by Kathleen Gross. This has a slight twist to it where Anne falls in love with Diana rather than with Gilbert. So listen to this. Inspired by Anne of Green Gables, contemporary middle grade graphic novel, Anne follows feisty redheaded Anne, who finally finds the perfect foster family and confronts her perhaps more than platonic feelings for her new best friend, Diana. The illustrations in this book just look so cute. I seen it at the bookstore like the last 2 times that I went on there, and I almost picked it up, but I told myself, it was still obviously winter, so I told myself I would just be back for it during the spring season. So definitely gonna pick this one up. So those are 2 Anne of Green Gables retellings. I could not choose between both of these to share with you guys, so I just had to share both of them because they both sound so good. Now moving on to wellness, friends. 2 things I want to share with you that have to do with wellness. I am someone who loves doing things that really nurture anything that has to do with my wellness, my health, my mental health, anything that has to do with my body just feeling good. So recently I discovered what adrenal cocktails are. So a little quick backstory on me is that I actually live with a chronic illness, and because of that I often experience frequent symptoms of fatigue. Every day is different. There are times when I get a surge of energy, and there are other times when I just don't feel like doing anything at all. And because of that, I am always on the lookout of finding things that can help support me in those departments of restoring my energy levels. Like a few months ago, I came across what adrenal cocktails are. I did some research on what even adrenal is, and apparently we have things that are called adrenal glands. So I did some research, and per Google, this is what adrenal glands are. So it says here, adrenal glands are small triangular shaped glands located on top of both kidneys. Adrenal glands produce hormones that help regulate your metabolism, immune system, blood pressure, response to stress, and other essential functions. So that is what your adrenal glands are. So it is important to consistently flush out, I guess, your adrenal glands for the restoration of your body, of your hormones, of your stressors, to be revitalized. Again, I am not a doctor, so please do your own research when it comes to anything health related that I'm going to be mentioning about adrenal glands. So adrenal cocktails, okay? Adrenal cocktails help support our body so it can go back to rest and repair mode rather than being on flight or fight mode. We stress our body by not giving it the right nutrients it deserves, or by being stressed out. So that affects our adrenal glands. And because our adrenal glands contribute to a lot of major things in our bodies, it is important to restore our adrenal glands. So lately I have been doing adrenal cocktails, and I found this recipe actually on TikTok. I would try and find the video and post posted down below so you guys can also hear what this person has to say about adrenal cocktails and the benefits of taking adrenal cocktails. So for the ingredients, you're going to need some sort of vitamin C. And for that, I like to use orange juice. Vitamin C is essential for recovering from stress. Make sure you add that on there. And then you're also going to need some sort of collagen provider. I'm using this one from Costco. I think it was like around $25 or something like that. And collagen helps with your amino acids. And then I like to add coconut water because this adds some sort of potassium, which helps maintain more fluid amounts inside of our cells. And it also helps our blood pressure. And then finally, I like to add some sea salt, which adds some electrolytes to our cocktail. And then I like to add all of that together, mix it all up, add some ice. You can even use some dried up garnish. You can even slice up some oranges and add it on there. Look up adrenal cocktails. There are a variety of recipes online that you can use. I have been loving doing adrenal cocktails as a fun midday pick-me-up rather than having to go and do just another cup of coffee. It has been honestly working wonders. I have noticed that my energy levels pick up during the midday, which is when I experience sometimes getting tired again. So that is something that I feel would be great to be doing, especially during this spring season. Now, the second wellness thing that I want to share with you guys is a podcast that I have been listening to. I'm going to put a screenshot here of what podcast in particular this episode is the one that I'm listening to or that I did listen to. And this is from the Mel Robbins podcast. In this particular episode, Mel Robbins, the host, is interviewing the doctor here. I forgot what his name was. And this doctor is, I believe, a psychologist. And his whole thing is about how he is helping people who have mental health problems by switching up the foods that they eat, because this thing is that the foods that we eat contribute to our mental health. And to be honest, I have heard about this concept before. Of course, in my brain, I'm like, yeah, of course, the foods that we eat do contribute to how we feel physically, mentally. Like, I've known that, but it's kind of like a thing that, yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that before. It's kind of those things like, I've heard it, but do I believe it? Is there concrete evidence to this? And the way that this doctor explains how the foods that we choose to eat do contribute to how we feel mentally made a lot of sense. And it really made sense when he mentioned something about how he doesn't know where in Western medicine doctors were like, oh yeah, the foods that you eat will give you diabetes, will impact certain organs, will give you this and that. How come that same thing wasn't said about our brains, about our mental health? The doctor was just like, I don't know why they think that the foods that we eat will not also trigger our brains, will not also make our brains unhealthy, will not also make our brains sometimes sick. If it could make other organs in our bodies sick, why not our brains, our mental health? Why not that too? Like I mentioned, I live with a chronic illness, so I am always looking for ways that I can help myself. And food has been definitely something that I've struggled with in the past. And even though I'm aware that certain foods that we eat will contribute to our health in good and bad ways, the way that this was explained to me really reaffirmed and clarified a lot of things. And I don't know, it kind of acted as this thing where it just pushed me to be like, hey, maybe this is why sometimes your brain isn't feeling well. Maybe sometimes that's why you're feeling exhausted. Our foods really contribute to our overall mental wellness in more ways than we actually knew or that I knew. And this podcast in particular, this episode really opened my eyes to that. So I'm really grateful that I came across this episode. My sister sent this episode to me and I was like, wow, that really makes sense now. So those are the two wellness things that I wanted to share with you guys that I feel would be wonderful to take a listen to craft and do for the spring season. So now moving on to activities, which is the last thing that I'm going to be sharing in this video. The first thing I want to mention is bathing, but not just any bathing. Okay, listen to me. Not just any bathing, sunbathing and nature bathing. These are actual real things, you guys, that people do. And I'm not just talking about bathing like with water. I am talking about sunbathing, as in letting the sun bathe you with its rays. Of course, when it comes to the sun, you don't want to do it for too long because that can also be very dangerous. So you want to make sure that if you are under the sun for X amount of time, you want to make sure you have some sort of protective gear or sunscreen on. The whole purpose of sunbathing or nature bathing is to be in the presence or the atmosphere of what that is, and just really allowing yourself to intake all of that. Like, allow your body to feel as if like the sun is drenching you with its rays. If you are going to be nature bathing, go to a forest, go to a park, and allow the chirps of a bird, allow the whole atmosphere of what nature is to sort of ravel over you. It's more of an imaginatory type of thing. I have been doing this for years, you guys, and I just love the whole concept of what this is. You really come out of these spaces feeling so rejuvenated, as if you actually took a bath. And I suppose that's what this whole purpose of this is. That's why it's called sunbathing, nature bathing, is to really allow these atmospheres to sort of bathe you, to wash over you. And in some cases, there's actually research to this, because I wrote about this in my upcoming book in regards to nature bathing. There's a whole science to this. There's actually people that go to nature and they actually even put rocks or sticks that they found, or a leaf if it's safe. They put it on their skin. They even lay down on the dirt or on the ground or on the patch of grass, and they allow to be just bathed by nature, by the elements, by these things that you find in this atmosphere. And that is sort of supposed to restore or bathe you and just make you feel better as a whole. I have tried both of these, sunbathing and nature bathing, and 10 out of 10, you guys, I recommend. It is a beautiful experience, but of course you have to be open to it. You have to imagine these things that are like washing over you as if they are water. So this spring and even summer season, friends, do all the types of bathings, okay? Sunbathing, nature bathing, I highly recommend. And I feel like this would even fall under the wellness category, because this really does something to me mentally that just feels so good. So that could even be added to your self-care routines or days. Now, the other two little things that I am for sure going to be doing this spring season is flower pressing. I have been loving flower pressing lately. I do want to eventually get a flower presser. Right now, I've only been flower pressing in between my books, but I have so much fun decorating with flowers that have been pressed. I recently made bookmarks. There's just so many fun decorative DIYs that you can do with pressed flowers, and I find like that would be such a beautiful moment where you can just enjoy the spring season by pressing flowers and doing some fun springy crafts. And then my last recommendation is coloring, friends, but not just coloring, it is coloring outside. And I guess in that same sense, it's just doing any sort of cozy, quote unquote, activity outdoors. My cozy activities consist of coloring, painting, writing, reading, and you can for sure do all of these things outdoors. So anything that you would consider an activity that you love to do, if you can take it outdoors, do so. Spend as much time as you can outdoors. There is so many benefits to living seasonally, and the spring season calls us to be outdoors, especially right now when, you know, it's not way too hot, but it's also not cold, and there's these moments where it just feels so good to be outside. Take advantage of those, friends. Live seasonally, okay? We are humans who by nature should be living seasonally, and oftentimes we forget that. We forget that we have these seasons as an opportunity to enjoy the fruits, the flowers that season is bringing for us, and that it is sharing with us, and we forget to enjoy those. So look up the fruits that are part of that season. Look up recipes and flowers to have in your home that are born during that particular season, and just surround yourself with that season's energy. I find that really helps to romanticize your life, to be able to uplift your moods, especially if you're someone who struggles with your mental wellness. I find that romanticizing your life in these ways really helps your overall mood. So that is one reason why I love doing these kind of videos, because it also helps me to plan out what I want to do for that particular season and go from there. So with that being said, friends, I really hope that you enjoyed this video, this things to do this spring season. I hope that you found one or two things on here that you might enjoy, maybe a book, a movie, activities. Let me know down in the comments below. Is there a book that you're willing to read from these recommendations, an activity, something that I mentioned about wellness, movies, shows? Let me know down in the comments below, or maybe if you have additional recommendations of things that we can enjoy during the spring season, please mention those down below. I would love to hear from you, and I'm sure the community here would also love to know that. With that being said, friends, I really appreciate you being here, for watching my videos. Hit the like button if you enjoy these kinds of videos. That way I can know that you guys want me to continue making recommendation videos. Also, if you are new here, please remember to subscribe. I post weekly here on my YouTube channel, so there are a lot more videos coming your way. As always, I really enjoy having you here, friends. Remember that you can create the life that you want because you so deserve it. I will be seeing you in a video very soon, so take care and bye for now.